Good evening. If you're tuned in right now, then you are part of the resistance. Welcome to the Gregory Wright Show. It is an honor to be presenting you information that you may not be getting anywhere else. If you think this information is worth sharing, then I highly encourage you to share this video with your loved ones, family members, and friends. My only mission is to assist my audience with becoming aware that this is not the America that you remember 10, 15, 20 years ago. Yeah, I said it. We've become a third world country. Look at our airports. Look at our roads in Mississippi. If you dare to venture beyond your staircase or entryway of the hometown you grew up in. How? Take a look at how high inflation is to determine whether or not we're in a third world country. Okay? Prices are high across all industries since 2021. High crime across this country. Have you seen what's been happening in Chicago, Illinois recently? Crime everywhere. Teenagers are running the streets. It's a lawless land. Our precious children are being targeted by nasty sexual groomers. Where they do that at? In third world countries. And here, obviously. Our failing schools. Kids can't read because of the school shutdowns during the pandemic, and they were barely able to read pre-pandemic. School shootings are happening almost every week. Every week. The FBI, CIA, IRS, ATF agencies are targeting law-abiding citizens like you and I through nonsensical laws. Draconian COVID-19 vaccine mandates, mask mandates, and school lockdowns, which I also mentioned. Okay? What's behind all this? You got elites that are part of the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, World Health Organization, and other global entities that want a one world government to entirely control the population through fear, poison food and medicine, water, broken families, censored speech, and banning firearms. So we're unable to fight against government tyranny, which is the reason why the Second Amendment to the U.S. Constitution of the United States exists in the first place. They want to take our families, our homes, our ability to think for ourselves, so we will be unable to fight for ourselves when they do choose to attack us physically. They're already attacking us through censoring speech and very covert ways already. Collapsing the U.S. economy and other economies throughout the world via eliminating fossil fuels, natural gas, eliminating small businesses and therefore the middle class, and getting rid of the U.S. dollar as the world standard medium of exchange are more recent areas of global elitist focus. Sounds overwhelming? Yeah, because it is. It is overwhelming. Once constant chaos ensues through any nation, through any city, or whatever the case may be, this gives the federal and state governments an opportunity to expand control over its citizens through solutions under the guise of helping, but will make matters exponentially worse, thereby inviting never-ending solutions that further exacerbates additional pain for everyone. Gives them an excuse to take over our lives. For example, after the World Trade Center bombings, the Patriot Act came about, which gave federal and state governments the ability, the authority to spy on its own citizens in the name of defending terrorism. Not knowing that, you know, the average American citizens don't give a shit about what's going on. They get up, go to work, get up, get their kids ready for school, go to work, come home, cook dinner, watch a little TV, go to sleep, lay down, do it all over again, right? Another example is the pandemic emergency that ushered in lockdowns, mask and shot mandates that caused people to lose their jobs, lose their livelihoods, get divorced, commit suicide, take drugs, drink themselves into oblivion, use drugs and get high to oblivion. These evil people are responsible for that. Yeah, there's some responsibility that we have to take on for ourselves, but when you go from night and day, when you go from day to night, day meaning endless possibilities, travel anywhere you want to go, to immediately being shut down and all this other kind of stuff with no warning, is bound to drive any sane person insane. Right? So they used the pandemic emergency to usher in all these lockdowns and mandates and emergency funding that was misused for other requirements that didn't have anything to do with the pandemic. Didn't have anything to do with COVID. Another example is when bigger banks are buying up smaller failing banks. Oh, you haven't heard that 2 banks have failed this year so far? We're basically going on the 5th month of 2023. Well, it's true. You know, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank have failed and shut down this year. Pretty sure you heard of it. If you haven't, wake up. These banks failed, one, because they were grossly mismanaged, and 2, those banks' clients were part of a woke agenda that contributed to Democratic campaigns across America, which is why they got bailed out. Green New Deal technology startup companies recouped all the money they lost from them 2 banks. Then the bank shut down. Had it been banks supporting gun businesses or oil companies, the bailout would not have never come to fruition. Now, I'm going to take a pause right now and tell you guys that everything that I'm talking about right now, the links are going to be in the description of this video. So if you got this far, that means that you're interested in what I am saying right now, and you're willing to do your due diligence and not just take my word for it. This stuff is real. This stuff is real. There have been 562 banks that have failed since the year 2000, most of which were tied to the 2008 housing market crash. These banks were involved with risky residential housing loans, and that they financed funding to people who otherwise would not have qualified due to poor debt to income ratio and poor credit. A good majority of those loans had variable interest rates. So when the Federal Reserve rose the overall interest rates on a macroeconomic level, mortgage rates rose accordingly, thus making mortgage payments so unaffordable, people simply just walked away from their homes and the homes were foreclosed upon. The banks had to eat that cost and they had to expense that cost some way. Some of them just went into bankruptcy and failed altogether. 562 banks since the year 2000. Right? When banks fail, one of three things can happen. Number one, they get bought up by bigger banks, where the bigger banks are in cahoots with the federal and state government who are pushing this World Economic Forum Great Reset agenda. Or two, they get owned by the federal government. Need I say more? Or three, assets are cleared out, they're liquidated, and then the building is repurposed to serve another industry such as retail or something like that. What I know for damn sure is when a crisis strikes, that is an opportunity for the federal and state government to rush in, such as the banking crashing, bank failure crisis. That is an opportunity for federal and state government agencies who regulate banks to rush in and create new strict regulations in the name of preventing another catastrophe, but really aimed at expanding power, diminishing citizens' rights, pushing the globalist agenda for world dominance and control, as I stated earlier. The federal government should be focused on enforcing the rules and regulations that are already in place, not creating more. I want to take another pause because I think I said a lot. I want to take another pause for a quick second and focus on the central bank digital currency and how it feeds into the Great Reset, economic, social governance, the Green New Deal, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion paradigm. By the way, if you haven't checked out Glenn Beck's book, The Great Reset, he does a really good job at explaining that the Great Reset is an overarching umbrella for specific programs aimed at controlling citizens around the world. Again, these programs are economic, social governance, Green New Deal, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and central bank digital currency. Let's get into each of those. The Great Reset is simply a 180-degree turn, 180-degree departure from how world economies were run pre-pandemic 10, 15 years ago, even though all of this started way before the COVID-19 pandemic. They've been working on this for a while. 180-degree departure from how world economies were run, such as free market capitalism, meritorious performance was rewarded. You did well, you got a star, you got a medal, you got a raise, you got a trophy. Now everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets an award, everybody gets a medal. Striving for oil independence. What is wrong with that? We're selling oil to other nations in the world creating revenue for us, and thereby making natural gas and oil and all that cheaper for the common people like you and I. The best talent was hired at these companies and these agencies. We weren't relying on, well, affirmative action existed, I guess, but I mean, I personally don't believe in affirmative action. I believe that a man and a woman should stand on their own merits, on the skill sets that they bring to the daggone table, and it shouldn't have anything to do with the color of your skin, what your sexual orientation is, and what community you're a part of. Networking is important, but when you network, you got to do it on the merits of your skill set that you bring to the table to make it a win-win for everybody. Profits were maximized. A long time ago, before this COVID-19 pandemic. Culturally, males were males, females were females, and there was a clear distinction between good and evil. Free speech was way better, and there was less infringement of the second, or on our Second Amendment rights. When you look at the world today, everything is totally the opposite. Everything is totally the opposite. You got us talking about Tiger Man. You got us using terms like Latinx and cisgender and non-binary. Where the hell did all this crap come from? Green energy initiatives over profits. Performing well is frowned upon. A person isn't hired at some companies unless they identify as being some sort of victim. Free speech is gone. Males are in female sports and locker rooms. Why? To purposely destroy culture, destroy the economy, and destroy the citizens' rights to protect themselves against government tyranny. Economic and social governance is a program governments around the world, including ours, use to vet or judge companies across all industries based on how dedicated they are to the Green New Deal and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Government entities running economic social governance programs issue companies an ESG score. Much like a person's personal credit score, a company's ESG score works in the same way. The higher the ESG score, the more business loan opportunities there are to expand that company's operations. The lower the ESG score, little to no loans are made available for business expansion. The Green New Deal is a response to the climate change epidemic, which, by the way, does not exist because the climate is always changing. But this is a way for globalists to control people with fear while at the same time lining the pockets of puppets who push this crap. The climate is always changing. So they're using a constant. They're using a constant. It's not even a variable. Well, it is a variable if it's changing, but if we know that it's changing, it becomes a constant in my mind. And they're using what normally happens and turning it into a catastrophe so that large slices of yearly government budgets are devoted to that effort, which if anyone with a half a pea brain would understand that climate is always changing. Why are we devoting money for this effort? Somebody's lining their pockets. Somebody's lining their pockets. And the ones that are pushing for this 100% are getting paid to push it. Speculation, I can't prove it, but come on now. Come on. Right? The Green New Deal's purpose is to replace fossil fuels, natural gas with windmills, solar panels, and electric cars. Why? Because when absolutely everything is electric, the evil forces in control of all this can flick a switch and turn everything off all at once or in portions as they see fit to control you, to dominate you, to limit your access, limit your movements. And it is a tactical advantage that they will have, because at some point, if they do it often enough, you will become defenseless against their attacks, especially if they take all the guns away. If the proponents of climate change were really serious about climate change, then world elites, heads of nation states, and top bureaucrats would stop using private jets to fly to Davos, Switzerland, G8, G20 summits, and wherever the hell else they travel to around the world to talk about how they're going to control the population. They would stop using daggone private jets to do so. None of the vehicles that they ride on to go to these places are electric. If they were really serious about this stuff, they would have visited East Palestine, Ohio, to at least check on them, to at least see how they were doing, to at least write legislation to get funding to clean up that area. They've done nothing. They've done nothing but photo op opportunities, basically. That train wreck killed tens of thousands of fish and animals and responsible for making thousands of people sick. And they're still suffering. You talk about climate change? Yeah. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is the new affirmative action whereby, in addition to benefiting Black and brown people, it also favors all LGBTQI community. These guys, including straight blacks, are given school admission preferences and job hiring preferences based on race and gender identity alone. Forget about actually being academically or skillfully qualified for those positions. Examples of the current White House press secretary. Another example is our Secretary of Transportation, who haven't done one constructive thing to benefit ordinary, hardworking citizens like you and I. How does this all fit into the central bank digital currency? Quite simply, CBDCs play a major role within the Great Reset construct to control citizens' movement around the world. CBDCs will replace the paper dollar. It is actually a dollar bill in digital form. You know, the same concept as Cash App and Venmo. Only difference is the use of CBDCs will be tied to an economic social governance score participating banks will assign to individual consumers, just like banks will do to companies as discussed earlier. By the time the government efficiently gets to this point where you stand on economic, cultural, and political issues will determine how high or low your individual ESG score will be. If you comply with the reset in all aspects, then your score will be high enough to resemble some semblance of freedom pre-COVID. When you don't comply, the opposite will happen. Those in charge will limit your ability to do even the most basic things like shop for toilet paper or food or get medical care, which is the reason why we need to home grow our medical professionals within our own family and get them in tune to this crap, because it's coming soon. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's no 2024 election process at all, and we're so deep into the rabbit hole that the 2024 election doesn't take place, and we're solely in a dictatorship, which I feel that we are in now. How do they plan to do this? You may ask that question. By pushing the button and turning your account off until you comply. That's basically it. If you're not a good noodle and you don't comply, your account will be shut off and your movement and your purchasing power will be severely limited, if not completely limited. Much like when everything switches from natural gas and fossil fuels to electric, as it relates to cars and homes, the button will be pushed to turn the lights out on you, leaving you completely defenseless and vulnerable. So if the evil powers that be think you're traveling too much, they'll shut your bank account down. If you want to buy additional ammo for your firearms, assuming that you still have firearms, they'll shut you down. How will they know if you're a good noodle or not? By tracking your social media posts and buying habits.
Hey, wake up.
This is the level that we're on right now. I am sounding the alarm. Wake up. Wake up. Spread this message to your family and friends, your co-workers, whomever you care for or about. Spread this message. Spread this message. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Gregory Wright Show.